History is rarely written by the defeated. Yet, in the silent, jagged crevices of Mount Etna, a memory persists. A memory of a time when the celestial order trembled. We often perceive the reign of the Olympian gods as an immutable fact, a crystalline structure of logic and law that superseded the raw, bleeding pulse of the earth. We speak of Zeus as the definitive architect of the cosmos, the wielder of the thunderbolt, the guarantor of justice. But sovereignty is a transient veil. Before the marble temples rose, before the hymns were codified, there was a moment of profound vulnerability. It was a moment when the sky itself seemed to fracture under the weight of a singular, catastrophic presence. To understand the Greek psyche is not merely to study their triumphs, but to gaze into the abyss of their greatest fear. The realization that the universe does not inherently favor the civilized. Beneath the narrative of divine progression lies the shadow of Typhon, the convergence of every nightmare the Hellenic world attempted to suppress. He was not merely a monster, he was the physical manifestation of the universe's refusal to be governed. As we peel back the layers of this ancient confrontation, we find ourselves questioning the very nature of authority. If the king of the gods can be broken, then what truly governs the tides of fate? But once that power is secured, it does not remain dormant. It begins to reshape the world around them, often at the cost of the very earth that birthed it.
Unveil the legends.
To the ancient Greek mind, beauty was synonymous with proportion, a concept they termed symmetria. The gods of Olympus were the ultimate expression of this, statuesque, balanced, and radiant. Typhon, however, was a deliberate, violent assault on this aesthetic. He was not merely a large beast, he was a manifestation of Apeiron, the boundless and the indefinite. The physical descriptions provided by Hesiod and later Pindar are not merely exercises in hyperbole. They are attempts to describe a creature that exists at the very edge of biological possibility. Imagine, if you will, a figure of such staggering verticality that his crown scraped the celestial sphere, brushing against the stars that the Greeks believed were the fixed markers of fate. This suggests that Typhon was not just a threat to the earth, but a threat to the very structure of the heavens. He was a cosmic intruder. From his shoulders sprouted 100 dragon heads, the Hecaton Kuranos. These were not silent sentinels. Each head possessed its own distinct, terrifying voice. In one moment, they might speak with the measured, articulate tones of a human, mocking the gods in their own tongue. In the next, they would dissolve into the roar of a lion, the bellow of a bull, or the haunting hiss of 1,000 vipers. This polyphony is central to his symbolic power. Typhon is the cacophony that precedes the silence of the void. He represents the breakdown of communication and the failure of the logos, the rational word. His lower half was a nightmare of serpentine evolution. Instead of legs, he possessed massive, undulating coils of vipers. This is deeply significant. In Greek chthonic tradition, the serpent is a creature of the earth, a guardian of secrets, and a symbol of the cyclical nature of life and death. By giving Typhon serpent limbs, the myth identifies him as being inextricably tied to the terrestrial crust. He is the earth's rage given form, a literal grounding of the storm's fury. His eyes were not merely organs of sight, they were apertures into a furnace. They flashed with a rhythmic, scorching light, a fire that was qualitatively different from the solar light of Apollo or the hearth fire of Hestia. Typhon's fire was destructive entropy. It did not provide warmth or illumination, it erased. When we analyze this anatomy through a critical lens, we see that Typhon is the anti-model. If Zeus is the architect of the palace, Typhon is the earthquake that finds the flaw in the foundation. He is the convergence of every predatory instinct elevated to a divine scale. he reminds the viewer that nature, in its rawest state, is not a garden. It is a slaughterhouse of competing energies. The terror he inspired was not just the fear of death, but the fear of unmaking. To be defeated by Typhon was not to die a hero's death. It was to be absorbed back into the primordial soup of chaos, to have your identity, your history, and your civilization stripped away until nothing remained but the howling wind. But this anatomical terror was not a random accident of nature. To understand why such a creature was permitted to exist, we must look backward into the bleeding heart of a mother's resentment. The birth of Typhon is perhaps the most significant political event in the mythic history of the cosmos. It marks the moment when Gaia, the primordial mother, realized that her grandchildren, the Olympians, had become tyrants. To the modern ear, the story of the Titanomachy, the 10-year war between the Titans and the Olympians, is often presented as a triumph of good over evil. But in the academic tradition of the Greeks, it was a transition from the raw and the ancient to the structured and the new. However, every revolution carries the seeds of its own counter-revolution. When Zeus cast the Titans into Tartarus, he did not just win a war, he committed a grand act of suppression. He buried the past in a hole so deep that the sun could not reach it. Gaia, the earth, is the ultimate witness to this. She is the silent observer of every dynasty. While she initially aided Zeus in his rise to power, she soon found his brand of order to be stifling. The Olympians were celestial. They lived high above the soil, breathing the thin air of ambition. They had forgotten that they were born of the mud. Typhon was Gaia's response to this celestial arrogance. In the Theogony, his birth is described as an act of desperation and calculated malice. She coupled with Tartarus, the personification of the deepest, darkest pit of the underworld. This union is philosophically harrowing. It represents the marriage of the surface, earth, and the abyss, Tartarus. The result of this union was Typhon, a child born specifically to be a god-slayer. He was gestated in the dark, fed on the collective trauma of the imprisoned Titans. Every groan of the earth, every tectonic shift, and every volcanic sigh was a part of his upbringing. He was not raised on ambrosia and nectar, but on the bitterness of the displaced. There is a variation of this myth found in the Homeric hymn to Apollo that adds a layer of psychological complexity. In this version, it is Hera, the queen of the gods, who brings Typhon into existence. Angered by Zeus's ability to birth Athena from his own head without her involvement, Hera seeks a way to produce a son who is greater than Zeus, just as Zeus was greater than his father, Cronus. She prays to Gaia and the Titans, striking the earth with her hand, demanding a child of absolute power. This version suggests that Typhon is a product of internal divine strife. He is the manifestation of the shadow side of the marriage between Zeus and Hera. He is the child of spite, the physical embodiment of the resentment that festers when power is held unequally. Whether born of Gaia's grief or Hera's rage, Typhon's origin remains the same. He is the inherent consequence of the Olympians' machinations. He represents the return of the repressed. You cannot build a golden city on a foundation of bones and expect the ground to remain still. Typhon is the debt that the gods owed to the primordial world, a debt that was about to be collected with interest. As he rose from the earth, the very air of Greece began to change. The birds stopped singing, and the sea turned the color of bruised iron. The last son of earth was ready to challenge the King of Heaven, and in doing so, he would reveal the terrifying truth that even the gods can bleed. If Typhon was the earthquake, his consort, Echidna, was the lingering plague. To understand the magnitude of Typhon's impact on the mythic world, we must look at his union with the Viper Woman. Echidna was an anomaly of the primordial era, a creature of staggering beauty from the waist up, but terminating in the massive, speckled coil of a serpent. She dwelt in the Erema caves, deep beneath the earth, far from the light of the Olympians and the paths of mortal men. Their union was not merely a biological event, it was a dark pact between the sky-shattering force of the storm and the patient, predatory hunger of the chthonic depths. Together, they established a dynasty of terror that would serve as the primary antagonists for every Greek hero to follow. Consider their progeny, for they are the architectural blueprints of our collective nightmares. First, there was Orthrus, the two-headed hound of Geryon, representing the duality of guardian and predator. Then came Cerberus, the three-headed sentinel of the underworld. Through Cerberus, Typhon's influence reached even into the realm of Hades, ensuring that even in death, the soul could not escape the shadow of the storm giant's lineage. Then we encounter the Lernaean Hydra, a creature of such regenerative malice that it required the intervention of a demigod to slay. The Hydra is perhaps the most philosophically significant of Typhon's children, representing the Hydra-headed nature of chaos itself. For every problem solved by civilization, two more arise in its place. They also sired the Chimera, a literal biological impossibility. Lion, goat, and serpent fused into a fire-breathing herald of doom. To the Greeks, the Chimera was the ultimate symbol of akosmia, the absence of order. It was a creature that should not exist, yet it breathed, hunted, and killed. Why does this lineage matter to our analysis of Typhon? Because it reveals his long-term strategy. Typhon knew that his direct assault on Olympus might fail. By populating the world with his offspring, he ensured that the age of order would be a lie. He created a world where the wilderness remained lethal, where the borders of the city were always under threat, and where the gods' favorite mortals would always have to bleed to prove their worth. Typhon is the father of the monster as a concept. Before him, creatures were often just forces of nature. After him, they became targeted challenges to the divine status quo. His family tree is a map of the hidden dangers of the world, a reminder that while Zeus may rule the sky, the earth and its dark corners still belong to the children of the storm. But as his children spread across the Mediterranean, Typhon himself turned his 100 heads toward the peak of Mount Olympus. The time for procreation had passed. The time for deicide had begun. The clash between Zeus and Typhon is the Götterdämmerung of Greek mythology, the moment where the entire cosmic experiment almost ended in fire and ash. This was not a quick skirmish. It was a grueling, multi-phase war that pushed the king of the gods to the very brink of annihilation. When Typhon first rose from the earth, the sight was so harrowing that the inhabitants of Olympus, the same gods who had defeated the Titans, simply broke. In an act of profound cowardice that is rarely discussed in modern retellings, the gods fled. They retreated across the sea to Egypt, a land they perceived as ancient and strange, and there they transformed themselves into animals. This is a crucial moment of divine de-evolution. Typhon's presence was so overwhelming that it stripped the gods of their humanity, forcing them back into the instinctive, fearful shapes of the animal kingdom. Zeus, however, found himself in a position where flight was no longer an option. To flee was to cede the universe to the void. Armed with his adamantine sickle and his thunderbolts, he met Typhon on the slopes of Mount Cassios. The initial exchange was catastrophic. Zeus rained down lightning that would have vaporized any other foe, but Typhon's 100 heads exhaled a counterfire, a searing black flame that neutralized the celestial bolts. In the ensuing struggle, Typhon managed the unthinkable. He bypassed the gods' defenses and wrapped his massive serpentine coils around Zeus. With the cold precision of a butcher, Typhon used Zeus's own sickle to sever the sinews, the tendons, of the god's hands and feet. This is the ultimate image of the crippled king. Zeus, the guarantor of justice and the source of all lightning, was reduced to a weeping, immobile pile of divinity. Typhon carried the broken god to the Corician cave in Cilicia and hid the stolen sinews in a bear's skin, guarded by the dragon woman Delphine. At this moment, the universe hung in a state of terrifying transition. There was no king in heaven. The sun dimmed, the winds became erratic, and the order of Zeus began to dissolve. It was only through the intervention of Hermes, the god of thieves and boundaries, and Pan, the spirit of the wild, that the sinews were recovered. Using a ruse involving music and deception, they lulled the guardians to sleep and restored Zeus's physical form. Reinvigorated, Zeus mounted his chariot drawn by winged horses and pursued Typhon with a renewed, desperate fury. The battle moved to Sicily, where Typhon attempted to shield himself by throwing entire mountains at the god. In the final, decisive move of the war, Zeus struck Typhon with a concentrated volley of 100 thunderbolts, scorching all of his heads simultaneously. As Typhon fell, the earth groaned under his weight. Zeus did not kill him, for Typhon is an elemental constant, but instead pinned him beneath Mount Etna. The philosophical weight of this ending cannot be overstated. Zeus won not through superior strength alone, but through a combination of restoration and the physical weight of the earth itself. He used the world to imprison the world's sun. But the victory is uneasy. The smoke and lava that billow from Etna are the literal breath of Typhon, a reminder that the monster is not gone, merely suppressed. The mountain is a lid on a pot that is forever boiling. The flight of the Olympians to the banks of the Nile is one of the most intellectually jarring moments in classical mythology. To the traditionalist, it represents a moment of divine cowardice. However, through an analytical lens, it is an exercise in theological syncretism. When the Greek poets claimed that their gods fled Typhon by assuming the forms of animals in Egypt, they were attempting to reconcile two vastly different religious worldviews. To the Greeks, the gods were the ultimate expression of human potential, idealized, rational, and beautiful. To the Egyptians, the divine was often zoomorphic, possessing the heads of jackals, hawks, or crocodiles. By framing this difference as a disguise taken to escape Typhon, the Greeks were asserting that the Egyptian gods were merely the Greek gods in a state of existential trauma. Yet, there is a deeper resonance here. Typhon himself was almost immediately identified with the Egyptian deity Set, or Seth. Set was the god of the Red Land, the sterile, burning desert that stood in eternal opposition to the Black Land of the fertile Nile Valley. Set was the murderer of Osiris, the agent of confusion and the wielder of the desert storm. By linking Typhon to Set, the ancients were acknowledging a universal truth, that every civilization, no matter how advanced, is flanked by a wilderness that seeks to reclaim it. This Egyptian connection transforms Typhon from a singular monster into a metaphysical principle. He becomes the personification of the Isfet, the Egyptian concept of chaos and injustice, which must be eternally repelled by Ma'at, the cosmic order. The battle did not just happen on Mount Casios, it happens every day at the horizon where the desert meets the silt. When we look at Typhon through this lens, we see that he is the foreigner in the most absolute sense. He is the force that forces the gods to abandon their seats of power and hide in the mud, stripping them of their dignity and reminding them that, in the face of true chaos, even a king is just another creature seeking a burrow. But once the storm subsides and the gods return to their marble halls, the memory of that fear remains, manifesting as a series of misconceptions and symbols that continue to haunt our collective subconscious. In the modern era, we are prone to the Disneyfication of myth, where Typhon is relegated to the role of a mindless boss battle in a video game, or a one-dimensional villain in a film. This is a profound misunderstanding of his function. Typhon is not evil in the Judeo-Christian sense. He is ontological entropy. One of the most significant misconceptions is the idea that Zeus's victory was a triumph of morality. In the academic tradition, Zeus does not defeat Typhon because he is better or more righteous. He defeats Typhon because his brand of order is more sustainable for the continuation of life. Typhon's victory would have resulted in a universe of static, screaming noise, a world where no seed could take root and no word could hold meaning. Zeus represents the limit, whereas Typhon represents the limitless. We must also consider the variations in his birth that suggest he is a mirror image of Zeus. In some esoteric traditions, Typhon was born from a jar of semen that Cronus had given to a maid, or he was a direct byproduct of Hera's attempt to bypass the masculine creative principle. These variations suggest that Typhon is the dark twin of the Olympian order. He is the waste product of divine creation. Just as every city produces a landfill, every cosmic order produces a Typhon. He is the accumulated junk data of the universe, rising up to overwrite the program. Symbolically, Typhon is also the bridge between the volcanic and the atmospheric. He is the typhoon, the whirling wind, and he is the magma, the subterranean fire. He represents the fluidity of destruction. Unlike the Titans, who were often associated with massive, static elements like the sun or the moon, Typhon is characterized by his motion. He is unpredictable. He is the black swan of the ancient world, the event that no one saw coming, which changes the rules of the game forever. To study Typhon is to study the limits of the human ego. We build our cities, we codify our laws, and we believe we have conquered the wild. But Typhon is the reminder that the earth is not a passive stage for our dramas. It is a living, breathing entity that occasionally produces a Typhon to remind us that our tenure on this planet is conditional. He is the symbol of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object of divine law, and the resulting friction is what we call history. The legacy of Typhon is not found in broken statues or faded papyri. It is found in the very vibration of the earth beneath our feet. When Mount Etna erupts, the local population does not see a geological event. They see the restlessness of the defeated. Typhon's legacy is the aesthetics of the sublime. He is the prototype for every cosmic horror entity in modern literature, from the eldritch abominations of H.P. Lovecraft to the world-eating giants of modern cinema. He represents the realization that there are things in the dark that do not care about our prayers, our gold, or our civilizations. He is the great leveler. Furthermore, Typhon's defeat established the template for the heroic cycle. By populating the world with his monstrous children, he created the necessity for the hero. Without the Hydra, there is no Heracles. Without the Chimera, there is no Bellerophon. In a strange, paradoxical way, Typhon is the architect of the very heroism that seeks to extinguish his lineage. He provides the friction necessary for the human spirit to sharpen itself. In the modern age, we have replaced the serpent-footed giant with other terrors: climate collapse, nuclear winter, or the uncontrolled growth of artificial intelligences. But the underlying fear remains purely typhonic. It is the fear that the systems we have built to protect us, our Olympians, will prove to be cowards in the face of a truly existential threat. It is the fear that, in the end, we will be left alone in the Corician cave, waiting for someone to find our severed sinews. Typhon is the ghost in the machine of civilization. He is the reminder that progress is a fragile line drawn on the surface of an abyss. As we look back at the smoking crater of Mount Etna, we are forced to confront a sobering truth. The conflict between Zeus and Typhon was never truly resolved. It was merely adjourned. The order we enjoy is not a natural law, but a hard-won truce between the sky and the deep. Perhaps the myth of Typhon is not a story of a monster and a king, but a reflection of the human condition. We are, ourselves, a convergence of the Olympian and the Typhonic, capable of building towering structures of logic while carrying within us a primordial, chaotic drive to tear them down. We are the architects of our own destruction and the kings of our own temporary heavens. In the end, we are all living on the slopes of our own volcanoes, hoping the ground beneath us remains silent for just one more day. For we know that somewhere, deep in the dark, the 100 heads are beginning to stir, and the dragon tongues are learning to speak our names. Thanks for watching.